Ladies and gentlemen, I'm back, and it's great to be back with you for this week's Catholic Citizen. Folks, it's hard to be back, though, to talk about this week's news. If you've been paying attention at all with what's going on in Afghanistan, we are witnessing the greatest foreign policy disaster in my lifetime, to say the very least, as for 20 years, the United States has poured sweat, toil, bled our blood to free a country from a awful, terrible regime that believes in an extreme form of Islam that subjugates women, that beats women, that tortures women, that rapes women. And just like that, we're handing the country back to the Taliban. We've got lots to talk about. Friends, welcome back to the Catholic Citizen. We've got lots to cover on this week's show, but before we do, we always have to remember that this show doesn't happen without your help and without the help of Casa Bea Cleaning. So let's talk a little bit about Casa Bea, because Casa Bea is just fantastic people doing fantastic work, making sure that the lights stay on here in the studio. So please, patron Casa Bea, whether that's cleaning your home, your office, whatever it may be, please go to Casa Bea, help them, because they are helping us. Secondly, we need your help as well to keep the show going. So please become a part of our Citizens for Heaven group. We have individuals who are giving $3 a month, individuals who are giving $25 a month. We just tremendously appreciate any help that you can give. And there's little perks that come whenever you help out and become a part of the Citizens of Heaven. So please consider going to thecatholiccitizen.com today to help us out to keep this show going. And folks, this show is incredibly important because we need to be informed as Catholics so that we can inform others. As I reflect back on what's been taking place now in the last couple weeks in Afghanistan, elections have consequences. And these decisions that have been made, these have been impacted by the current president of the United States of America. Do you think that the withdrawal would have happened in the same way if President Trump was still the president of the United States of America? Now, we can talk all about the reality of, I think President Trump made a mistake in his negotiations with the Taliban and what we conceded to, including the release of many of their prisoners, including the fact that we said that you can go ahead and continue to attack the Afghan military just as long as you don't attack the United States of America. But here's the reality, folks. President Trump is no longer president. And President Joe Biden has to own completely everything that's going on. He was asked in yesterday's press conference, do you bear responsibility? He said, yes, I bear responsibility for what's going on. And then he went on to blame President Trump. He went on to blame President Trump by saying that it was President Trump who entered into this negotiated deal to get our troops out by May 1st. So number one, already he's admitted that the deal has changed, that he had moved the deadline up to September 11th. And then he arbitrarily moved it back to August 31st because he didn't want the, political disaster of what's taking place now happening on September 11th. Beyond that, though, the president changed course on President Trump's decision on the Paris Climate Accord. The president changed course on the Iran nuclear deal. All these deals involved other nations. But you're telling me he can't change course? He can't renegotiate a deal with the Taliban? Or even walk away? I mean, why does he feel a sacred duty to keep that agreement, but not the agreement with Iran or for the Paris Climate Accord? Like, this was one deal that he could not walk away from with President Trump. He's literally changed course on every single policy issue. But on this one issue, nope, I'm going to stay to it. So, again, we can argue back and forth all day long whether or not we should be in the country or not. But it's the how we have left which causes me deep and grave concern about this presidency. The other thing, he brought up in the news conference as well, he said, if we were attacked on September 11th, 2001, from a group in Yemen, we never would have gone in to Afghanistan. Fair enough, maybe we wouldn't have. But that's a hypothetical. The fact is, we have been there for 20 years, rebuilding the nation, allowing girls to go to school. And the way that we left has given this country back to the Taliban. And he's been lying directly to our faces, or somehow he's not getting this information and I am, about what is taking place on the ground there in Afghanistan. And if that's the case, my God, are we in trouble? But saying that Americans have no problem getting to the airport, saying that, if Americans wanted to get out of the country, they can. That he's going to get every American out that wants to leave. Notice that little caveat he leaves in there, who wants to leave. The Americans that are choosing not to come, they brought their families, often who have Afghans, with them. And because the Afghans don't have visas, the people have told them, the U.S. State Department, look, you can leave because you're an American citizen, but your family can't come. So you have to make a choice. You're going to stay with your family, you're going to come back to the United States. What would you choose? You're going to abandon your family? So you're an American who doesn't want to come back. So earlier in the week, the NBC News reported that a crowd was tormented at a Taliban checkpoint around the airport, with soldiers whipping and beating those in line to leave, including a woman clinging to her baby. So yeah, anybody who wants to get to the airport can get there, except you just have to go through a Taliban checkpoint where you're being whipped and beaten, including if you have a little baby. Oh, and by the way, during the press conference yesterday, President Biden admitted that the United States gave to the Taliban. Again, this is a country who's been killing our soldiers and only hasn't for the last 18 months because President Trump made the deal. But they've been killing American soldiers, torturing people. And what did we do? We went to them and gave them the names of U.S. citizens. First of all, we left the names of U.S. citizens and the names of people who have been working with us, translators and others, in the U.S. Embassy, where the Taliban got a hold of that. So they have a kill list already, but then we handed them more, saying, yeah, these people, they need to get through the airport. Here are their names. All of this while Afghan Christians reportedly are fleeing to the mountains in desperate attempt to escape the Taliban, who's going door to door to kill them. In fact, the Taliban had been going door to door, taking women and children. The people, in fact, must mark their house with an X if they have a girl over 12 years old, so that the Taliban can take them. If they find that a young girl in the house was not marked, they will execute the entire family. If a married woman 25 years old had been found, the Taliban promptly killed her husband, do whatever they want to her, and then they would sell her as a sex slave. This is taking place on the ground. This is reports that are coming out on the ground here in Afghanistan. But this is the same Taliban we're relying upon to have these security checkpoints outside the airport. And we're trusting them so much that we're giving them the names of Americans. One of the American women trying to get to the airport was beaten twice, even though that she had a U.S. passport. The Taliban have sentenced the brother. This is coming from CNN. This is not coming from like crazy right-wing networks, folks. This is coming from CNN. From CNN, the Taliban have sentenced the brother of an Afghan translator to death, according to letters obtained by CNN, accusing him of helping the U.S. and providing security to his brother, who served as an interpreter to the American troops. So Afghans in threat of death and American citizens who are beaten through the night are just told to make it to the airport. And oh, by the way, if they made it to the airport, originally they had to pay $2,000 in flights just to get back to the country. Now, once this became public, the State Department retracted the charge. But the very fact that we are charging these American citizens who are fleeing the country because of the disastrous withdrawal of the Biden administration is going to be charged money, $2,000, to get out of the country. Taliban have now told working women, stay at home, admitting that they're not safe in the presence of the militant group soldiers. Taliban spokesman Zabihullah Mujahid said in an interview with the New York Times, explaining that women need a chaperone or a mahram during journeys of 3 days or longer. This is a huge concession on part of the Taliban, who before, anytime a woman gone out in public at all, they need a mahram or someone who would journey with them in public. But now it's only if there's a journey 3 days or longer. Wow, they're really making concessions here, folks. All of this leads us to yesterday, when the United States saw the deadliest day for American troops in 10 years. 13 service members killed, 18 others injured in a suicide bomb attack outside the Abbey Gate of the Kabul airport. Nearly 90 Afghanistanis dead. 90. Over 100 people lost their life yesterday. It didn't have to be this way. Now, again, the president keeps saying that President Trump made a deal and he was staying faithful to it. Again, I'll be the first to admit, I don't like the deal that President Trump made. I don't even like the fact that we were negotiating to start with the Taliban. But I understand we've been spending trillions of dollars in a 20-year war. But again, a U.S. analyst said the other day on Fox News, quote, "I don't think a president who didn't feel bound by his predecessor on the Iran nuclear deal, the Paris Climate Accords, or anything else ought to have felt himself bound by agreement with the Taliban that was so detrimental ultimately to the war effort." By allowing in this deal the Afghan army to be attacked and saying that we weren't going to necessarily support them as we had, it's demoralizing for the country. Now, again, we could debate whether or not this deal was good. I don't think it was. But we cannot debate that this is one of the worst run endings to a war in American history. We were lied to by the president, or he and our intelligence officers are simply inept. Listen to this. This is what President Biden said on July 8th. This is a month ago, folks. This is a month ago. This is what the president came up and said before the American people about the withdrawal of troops when he was asked. He said, and I quote, "The jury is still out, but the likelihood that there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely." End quote. That's a month before all this took place. So what are some things I would have done differently? Look, I don't have all the intelligence. I'm not a military expert. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I can completely understand all of what's going on. But just from a layman's perspective, does this sound like a good move to you? On July 6th, 2 days before President Biden made those remarks, the U.S. left Afghanistan's Bagram airfield after nearly 20 years by shutting off the electricity and slipping away in the night without notifying the base's Afghan commander, who discovered the Americans' departure more than 2 hours after they left. Now, the Bagram Air Force Base is an Afghan military base. It was formerly the largest U.S. military base in Afghanistan. So President Biden said we had reports that the overrunning of Afghanistan could have happened maybe in 3 months. Why we weren't preparing for departure now and getting people out now, I don't know. But why did we give up the largest U.S. military base in the country, which is so much easier to secure than the airport in Kabul, which is surrounded by a city in which we've had to rely upon the Taliban to run checkpoints? This seems a little commonsensical to me, that maybe we don't give up our largest military base before we depart the country. But I'm not the president. But the way that we run this operation, ultimately, the way that President Biden has blamed the Afghan soldiers even for the fall of the war. They've been the one fighting the Taliban for the last 18 months. They've been the one taking the casualties. The United States has removed our support And they got the sense from the Biden administration that they would not be there to back them up. And that's exactly what has taken place. So much so that we're now dealing with the Taliban, requiring upon them, being dependent upon them to run these checkpoints outside the airport. So how can you blame the Afghan soldiers? But that's exactly what President Biden did. This is why Lord Forsyth of Drumlin from Great Britain said this, quote, "It is very hard to overestimate the scale of the catastrophe." And this was even before the Marines died. But, quote, "It is very hard to overestimate the scale of the catastrophe following the Biden administration's disastrous implementation of the decision to withdraw from Afghanistan. It was utterly disingenuous for President Biden to present the Afghans as unwilling to fight for the country after having withdrawn vital U.S. support services without an agreed ceasefire, precipitating the collapse of the Afghan state. It is very hard to overestimate the scale of the catastrophe." I'm very passionate, obviously, about the pro-life cause, but I've never been so frustrated and angry at an administration's actions. And I'm holding back because I just want to mourn at the moment for what has taken place and those families who have lost their loved ones, who will never see their son or daughter again. And you know what? The day before this took place, those Marines who went out to that checkpoint outside the airport there, they were told that there was intelligence information that a suicide attack was most likely imminent. But they went back out there the next day. Somehow, these ISIS-K fighters who've claimed responsibility, somehow they got through the Taliban checkpoint and made it to the United States military. And again, killed 90 Afghanis and 13 U.S. service members. But praise God for the U.S. military. Praise God for these young men and women who are the best we have to offer, who put their lives on the line not only to save American citizens, but to protect and save the Afghanistan people. The Afghanistan people who now face a regime who just before the attack not only told women to stay in their homes, but they banned music. They said no more music for the country. It's not long before they're already taking girls and raping them and torturing them. This is the country we're handing it back to, that we're now somehow cooperating with the group. Why we didn't, for example, I mean, you've heard it all in President Biden's press conferences. We're taking orders from the Taliban. We should be going out as the other countries were. Germany, England, they've all had troops there as well. They've been going out and rescuing people. But our soldiers have been told, stay put. Don't go out and get those American citizens. Don't go out and get those students who are there from San Diego, from California. There's U.S. citizens still stuck and trapped in the country. They can't make their way to the airport. And who would blame them? They're going from house to house trying to escape the Taliban. But we still have U.S. citizens in harm's way. And it's all because of a weak president. Meanwhile, you have people like former CIA director, General Michael Hayden, widely criticized for retweeting a split image comparing former President Trump's supporters to the Taliban. But this last week doubled down saying it's a good idea. The suggestion that MAGA-wearing unvaxxed Americans should be sent to Afghanistan. I can't believe the vitriol, the evil, which is coming from some of these people. All right. How much time we got left? 9:53. There's a lot more I'd like to cover. The fact that the FBI has come out. January 6th, the riot was not, quote, the result of an organized plot. The U.S. Capitol, what happened on January 6th, okay, get this. The FBI has concluded their investigation, is what they said. The U.S. Capitol, quote, was not the result of an organized plot to overturn the presidential election result, according to officials quoted in an exclusive Reuters report published on Friday morning. More specifically, sources report to Reuters that, quote, the FBI at this point believes the violence was not centrally coordinated by far-right groups or prominent supporters of then-President Donald Trump. The exact opposite of what we've been hearing from the mainstream media for the past, well, since January 6th. It's an organized attack by right-wing, crazy conspiracy theorists, and then, of course, President Donald Trump. FBI comes out. Nope, not the case. Didn't hear much about this, of course, because of the mess that is taking place in Afghanistan at this moment. Didn't hear probably much of Chicago public schools that have ordered teachers to hide students' self-declared gender identities from their parents. In response to the question of whether public school teacher needs parental consent to refer children by different names and genders than they use at home, CPS official Tony H. Howard wrote, quote, no, parents' guardians' consent is not required for students to be addressed by their name and pronouns that correspond to their gender identity. Parents' guardians should not be informed of name or pronoun changes unless the student requests such a disclosure. Meanwhile, even the New York magazine, a liberal magazine, is coming out pointing to the lack of efficacy for masks. You have all this debate, and they're calling Governor DeSantis down there in Florida a murderer because he's not masking his students in school. Meanwhile, Alyssa Shetter Perkins, the director of emergency medicine infectious disease management at Boston Medical Center, told the New York, a year ago, I said masks are not the end of the world. Why not just wear a mask? But the world has changed. There are real downsides to masking children for this long, with no known end date and without any clear upside. Most notably, she's quoting a study that recently came out, pointing to the fact that requiring student masking were each found to not have a statistically significant benefit. In other words, these measures could not be said to be effective. And finally, high schoolers and college students can expect a few dollars off a movie ticket or a bill at a local restaurant thanks to common student discounts that are being rolled out here in the great state of Indiana, right next door. Whole Woman's Health in South Bend and the Clinic for Women in Indianapolis are giving students a discount for movie tickets if they need an abortion. So why is everything taking place in Afghanistan? Why have we had such awful, terrible leadership? You have awful, terrible leadership when you have a lack of virtue, when you have a lack of character, when you have a lack of backbone. Friends, President Biden has been in the public eye for 50 years. He's been in public office. He's flip-flopped on nearly every issue. He's given up core principles that he said he even believed in. He, for example, flip-flopped on the Hyde Amendment in this presidential election, saying that for years he supported the fact that our taxpayer dollars should not go to fund abortion. And then when he was pressured running for president of the United States, he said it's time to let go of the Hyde Amendment. He's someone who's been on the wrong side of major foreign policy decisions, making mistakes that even when he was vice president, President Obama, like the surge in Iraq, had to come back and change course on. He's someone who believes that a baby in the womb through all 9 months of pregnancy should be allowed to be killed. He's someone that supports and allows the NIH to run procedures, putting the scalps of babies who've been aborted on mice. Should we expect anything different then when it comes to a foreign policy situation, whether or not he's going to do the virtuous thing, the right thing? When there's moral decay on the inside, as we see in our nation today. The fact that we're not even going to tell parents, hey, your kid might be struggling a little bit. They want to identify as another gender. But we're withholding that from parents. And in fact, if the parents believe that their child is a gender and should remain that way, we are calling that as a society child abuse. This is all things that our current president supports. Folks, I had a friend contact me yesterday, send me a message. And he was talking about a great awakening, that it's time in this country for another great awakening. We do need a great awakening. We need a Catholic great awakening. An awakening that will draw us back to search for, to look for, and to vote for virtuous leaders. Would you join me in praying for virtuous leaders to stand up, to rise up, and to be appointed to positions of influence where they can lead our people to truth, to freedom, to justice? We need it so badly now, because we're certainly not getting it in Washington, D.C. So let's begin right here, right now, in the Diocese of Toledo in Northwest Ohio. God bless you. See you next week on the Catholic